Excited to have Jeff Colquhoun join us from Michigan. He's going to be speaking to us about ways that we can help either our patients or family members or friends walking through a difficult time through cancer.
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Jeff Colquhoun. Actually, my first name's Peter, and that'll come up in the slides in a moment. My talk is about how an affliction and adversity has affected every aspect of my life, not only my practice, but recreation, my family, and aspects that you'll hear kind of positive and negative, but overall it's been an incredible blessing to me. I have the advantage of going a little bit later, one of the last lectures, and I've kind of picked some of my material out of those who've already spoken. When the grant recipients were speaking, I saw there was adversity in their lives. And Jocelyn, I think it was, had issue with broken relationships and interruption in schooling, and Becca had intense anxiety going on to a mission trip, and I think it was Daniel. He said public speaking. By the way, if Daniel's here, I think you did a great job in your talk. So mine is on an uncertainty that developed at a most inconvenient time in my life, but there's a proverb that says, many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the purpose of the Lord that prevails, and that's what I hope will be kind of evident throughout this talk. Just a little bit of background on me. I was blessed to grow up in a Christian family. My father was an ophthalmologist, grew up in Battlecreek, church attending. We went to Bible camps in the summer. I had a great education there early on in undergrad. I joined a fraternity, happened to be the Christian frat. I pledged my life to the Lord through the it's called CREW, Christian organization, and was blessed to have a great residency in New York Eye and Ear Infirmary, did a medical retina fellowship. I returned to take over my father's practice in Battlecreek in 1989, and there I was involved in clinical trial, the View 1, aflibercept, and the Vista. Balancing that with a lot of other things. See my family here, foremost Diane, who's here with us, and our two daughters, Jillian and Bridget. Peter's back home. Business with school and sports and things. Honestly, Diane did all the tutoring with the kids. She's the smart one, I think, in the group. We met in medical school, by the way, and Diane's an internist. So also I was throwing in some sports, doing triathlons, busy in our church. I was a board member. Built a surgery center and a medical office building, and you can see my four partners there. So something was a little array, though, and I knew in my own heart that my life was kind of compartmentalized. You know, I had God in the church, and I was in a Bible study, but God wasn't really in every aspect of my life. And so God had a lesson to teach me in retrospect, and hopefully that'll be apparent. Can you hear me all okay? All right. So just want to go back to mid-70s, just as this was a time of preparation. This is an old photo from one of my first of many ski trips out this way. It happened to be at Arapahoe Basin, and four of my friends, fraternity brothers, Tom Kepler on the left. He was from Milwaukee, and we picked up his Folk station wagon. As we're getting in the car, he says, "Hey, let's have a Bible verse as our theme." Like, go figure, four fraternity guys, and we have a verse, and it was Thessalonians 5. I recite it almost every day. Rejoice always, pray constantly, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. So we were even singing it. There's a song that goes to it, and I'm not great at singing. I'll have Juan Valle sing it for me. No. So we'll hold on that. But we'd sing it, and almost every day, this was in my heart and my mind, kind of like the Shema that was taught in Deuteronomy. And so also, just of note, the theme from Psalm 21:21, look upon the mountains, and to whom is our help? Our help comes from the Lord. Well, so the mountains, it was in the mountains that I gained my first inspiration. And just know that it's in times of good and plenty that we should be rich in the Word and our faith, and that's where we're going to have the armor to face trials down the road. So we do know that the trials come. It's called, Paul in these verses called the thorn in the flesh. He said, for 3 times he prayed that the thorn in the flesh would be removed from him, and God answered him, this famous phrase, "My grace is sufficient for you, and for my power is made perfect in your weakness." I never really understood what that meant, but I do now, and hopefully that'll become more evident. Because this date took place, and preceding April 6, 2011, there was sort of an introspective time in my life. My father died in 2009. A month later, my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She had a long protected case, and I had a friend who died in a tragic bike accident. So there was tragedy around me. But literally in one of my devotions in maybe June of that year, I prayed, and it was a prayer of thanksgiving. God, thank you. I've had a great life. You've given me lots of opportunities, and personally though, I've never had a significant trial other than some sports-related injuries, and so I actually asked God the question, what is my trial going to be? And I found out whether you ask that question or not, it's good to be prepared, because He was preparing me back to that ski trip with Tom Kepler and the guys, because the word was in my heart. So what happened was, during that summer, I was noticing a lesion in the back of my neck. Couldn't have been in a worse place, right at my neckline. Nobody else could see it, and it was chafing against a wetsuit I was wearing during triathlons and bleeding, and I ignored it. Stupid as a physician, and finally in early August, I showed Diane, and she said, "Oh my gosh, it's pigmented, it looks bad, you got to have a biopsy." I did, and the next day I had one of those calls from my surgeon friend who said, "Jeff, are you sitting down?" I said, "No, I'm busy. I can just tell me." And he told me it was melanoma. It was very deep, it was advanced, you got to get over to the University of Michigan right away. And immediately what flashed through my mind is, while my friend was removing the lesion, he had removed a couple of basal cells, and that's what we kind of thought it was. He told me, well, you can't be too careful. There was a fella here last year that had a lesion about this size, and I removed it, and it was melanoma, and wham, he was dead in 3 days, or three months. And so I think he regretted to tell me that, because that was kind of going through my mind. But there was just a scramble of questions and tracks and ways to go from there. So I'm just going to show just a brief slide of kind of the bad things that happened, the surgeries, and in summary, and kind of go on to how I cope. But over the past 7 years, I've had 5 recurrences. I quickly went from stage 3C, 3B, 3C to stage 4 with mets to the brain. I've had 4 major surgeries, modified neck dissection of lymph nodes, and 5 Gamma knife procedures, that's the stereotactic radiation, 3 or 4 encounters with immunotherapy. I was at a crucial time that in 2011, all there was the old immunotherapy, interferon you've heard of, and interleukin-2. I didn't want to do those at the time, and I'll tell you some of the treatment I had. But I had almost every complication you can imagine from those treatments. Colitis, hypophysitis, I lost my pituitary function, arthralgias. You'd be interested in this, I had uveitis on a couple occasions, and serious PEDs. I saw a retina specialist at U of M. They resolved, but that's why I had to be off and on treatment. The lower, you can see, maybe not real well, but the lower kind of right MRI scans, the primary first scan that shows the conversion from the 3C to stage 4 is when I had a seizure in the middle summer of 2014 that led me to University of Michigan for craniotomy, and I was one of the few patients I've ever had where it was done under IV conscious sedation, just lidocaine and some Versed, because it was right up against my motor strip and a high risk of loss of motor function on my right side. I was blessed that I had a great surgery, as it was for both neck dissections. There's about 15% chance of getting long accessory nerve damage. I did not. I have friends that did. And you can see from, there was a frontal lobe cyst that we're still watching, but in the posterior occipital lobe, you see it's a treated mass, and then that was what led to this lesion here in the right visual field, and it's progressed from the top was December, then this was March of this last year, then May. So it's been a progressive, basically a partial right hemianopsia from the left occipital lobe lesion. So that's what I've had to deal with. Now, my course has been an up and down, where there's been valleys, there's been peaks, and one of the psalms that I've really enjoyed, Psalm 23, and I've committed to memory, but what's really helped me was the phrase, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Well, that phrase says through the shadow of the death. It's not through death. And God has helped me a number of times through kind of what I felt was near impassable events, but He's been at my side all during those events. So just to tell you a little bit about a course of doing research and what I should do and where to go. One of the first thoughts I had, what I had knowledge of, was choroidal melanoma. And what I remember was that from the 5 cases I've seen, and maybe that's typical for a general ophthalmologist, and one was in the iris, and the other 4 were in the posterior uvea. And I think all of those 4 had significant to profound vision loss. They went to either University of Michigan or Will's Eye for radioplaque treatment. So I had those real concerns and fears. So at that time, Diane and I, both being physicians, we went on both a spiritual journey, but also the kind of practical scientific side of ours. Went into a huge kind of research mode, and I ended up doing research, both phone calls, Google search, and all, where the best place to go for my various stages. And we found out that melanoma was incredibly common and on the rise. There were only about 10 or 20 million cases in the 1940s, and then when I was diagnosed, 70 million a year, and this year there's expected to be 93 million cases. It's the 5th and 6th most common cancer, respectively, for men and women. The prognosis is for stages 1, 2, 3, 4. Great if it's caught early, 98%. It's just confined to the epidermis, and then stage 2, 80%. Then stage 3, 45%, and stage 4, 7 to 9%. Now that was in 2011-12. It's a little higher now with immunotherapy, but that was the last time that we looked at the stats, and we kind of decided, hey, we're not going to worry about the numbers, and we're just going to pray ourselves through every stage and every change. And so we decided that we would look at where the best treatment was. And initially, in 2011, I wasn't a candidate at stage 3 for the new immunotherapy, ipilimumab, maybe you've heard of, Yervoy. It's now been extended to stage 3, but I didn't want to be an interferon. It was a more general immuno agent, and it's a year-long course and makes you feel really terrible. And so I looked around the country where the best clinical trials were, and U of M had 1 or 2 trials for me, and MD Anderson had a dozen or more. So that took me down to Houston, and Diane and I made many a trip down there. We connected with a doctor Patrick, who is one of the world's foremost in melanoma. We actually built quite a friendship with him, and every opportunity, at every place we went, there was opportunity to share and witness, and we actually had, in the French, we took him out to dinner once, and we shared some of our mutual ideas, aspirations, and faith. He was Buddhist, and as Christians, we shared that, yeah, we meditate to Lord Jesus. And you might pray for Dr. Who, because we'll be visiting him again. I think he's about ready for Bible. So at MD Anderson, I was in a clinical trial for a vaccine, double vaccine, and for a period between 2012 and 13, I was flying down every Wednesday for about 3 or 4 months. So this is the first time my practice was impacted So every Wednesday I would fly down in the morning, get my treatment, and then come back, and I'd shift my surgery day to Thursdays to accommodate that. And that went on, they say, for 3 or 4 months, and I kept going back for follow-up, and I still have some follow-up a couple times a year. Apparently that therapy did not work. About 3 months later, I had a recurrence, and that took me back to U of M, and I decided to go with interferon. I did that for a year. And so then I was bouncing back to my Battlecreek hospital for the interferon treatments. At Cleveland Clinic, we established a relationship there because basically we, in the last year or so, when I had a recurrence in the occipital lobe, the larger one that affected my visual field, both neurosurgeons at U of M and MD Anderson thought I should have a repeat surgery, another craniotomy. And I was really looking for an alternative, and what drew us to Cleveland Clinic was Dr. Barnett, who was an innovator in something called LIT, laser intrastromal thermal therapy. And it was a YAG laser introduced through a 5mm incision for a tumor. And YAG laser, I thought, I'm familiar with that, we'll go that way. So we went to Cleveland, and he suggested no, he preferred to do my case in multiple split doses of Gamma Knife. And so that was in early part of 2017, and for the first treatment or two, we were in this big room with 8 other patients, and not a lot of time to interact. But the second time we were there, I think it was around a holiday, there was just one other patient and myself, and his spouse. And it turned out this couple they were living in UAR, United Arab Emirates, and while he and I were back in the treatment room getting our frames screwed to the skull, and so I was sharing with him, and at the same time I didn't realize, but Diane was praying with his spouse. And so it was one of the many examples of where God used us in different places to witness. At U of M, many times for MRI scans, I'd make a friendship with the lab tech, the MRI infusion tech. This one gal, she was a single mom. You could tell she was kind of lamenting. She was living with her mother, 2 young children. They'd fallen away from church, and so I encouraged her to go back to church. And after several visits later, where I asked her how she's going that way, she returned to church. And so I tried to make every opportunity to connect with people, and Diane and I as well, as we were going to different facilities and flyaways, we call them, to Houston, or road trips to U of M, we'd always try to look at those as little date days or date nights, try to find some joy out of it. So that's the kind of the spiritual part of it, is that we try and pray at every opportunity. I'll share in a minute a few slides at the end of one of my more down times while hospitalized at U of M for one of the complications of immunotherapy. So as I mentioned, the Bible was really important for us in our spiritual journey, and I really kind of hyped up my involvement in. I had a small group personal Bible study, as well as BSF, has heard of it, Bible Study Fellowship. Great, strongly recommend it. We've studied Revelations, John, and most recently Romans, and this fall we'll be doing the Old Testament, and it's been incredible strength to me. So how has this melanoma affected various areas of my life? Well, for our family, as I said, Diane and I have grown closer together. Jillian, Bridget, Peter have all been incredibly supportive. We've had to be away at times. We've had to adjust our schedules. Our prayer time has been enhanced, and so it's really been a growing time. Our family has come closer together. My practice has taken the biggest hit, impact. As I mentioned, I dropped down to 4 days a week when I was in a clinical trial. when I had the seizure and the craniotomy and then the immunotherapy, I took 6 months off in the latter part of 2014. So in scheduling, my office staff, they had to adjust and shift my patients around. We found a retina specialist across town, kind of a competing practice, but a real good guy. He took over a lot of my retina patients during that time, and I had accepted someone come back. The biggest change occurred this year. We were looking, because of my situation, and one of my senior partner is 65, he was looking at retiring, so we needed some continuity for our practice. So we looked at several other practices were interested in an acquisition. One was the University of Michigan. They were moving at such a snail's pace that we had to divert, and we went with this Lancey group called LOI. So first of this year, we became part of that group, and that was difficult, to say the least. Different computer system, they had different policies and procedures, and my one partner decided June 1st he was going to retire, and my health mainly, my vision, the visual field change you saw was affecting the way I was doing things. It was harder to do procedures. With that scotoma, I had to come in on my left side because of the right scotoma, and the adrenal insufficiency and all. I wear a band to notify anyone in case I topple over. But it was making it really difficult to function early in the day. I'm thankful to Stan that you gave me a late morning time, because it takes that long for my endocrine system to kick in. So that was a real strain and stress on the practice. And as of June 1st of this year, I've taken a leave of absence, and that was hard to do. I'm looking for places for me. I'm going to talk a little more about some of the things I have planned, but I'm still leaving it up to the Lord what my future opportunities will be. Financial, as you imagine, as I've been cutting down my practice, my revenue has taken a hit, and fortunately, Diane and I, our family, we've budgeted, we've saved. Diane's as more and more frugal than I am, and so we've saved for college. We have still Bridget's going to be a senior in high school. She has college yet to go, and Jillian is going to finish up her nursing this year at Hope College. And our oldest son has high-functioning autism, and we're not sure the future for him, but he's in a trade track right now. So, and as you can imagine too, with the care I'm getting, we have one of those high-cost, high-deductible plans. It's like, what's maximum out of pocket? It's like $12,000 a year. We often meet that in like January or February, and then there's still other costs. Some meds aren't covered, and imagine all the travel and whatever. So there's been a financial issue as well as emotional. I'm a fairly stable. My best friends tell me I'm just this kind of rock stable person, and I am cool and calm, but internally I'd be wrong to say that I haven't experienced some stress. And one service that U of M's had is they have a psychiatrist who's available every Friday, and hardly anyone takes advantage of it. So any trip that we make, we try to schedule appointments on Friday. We'll visit Sarah Dumas, and she's great. We'll just chat with her. She's, how you're doing? How's your family doing? We often end up shifting our discussion, talking about Peter, who has autism, and how he's impacted. But she's been really great, and so we've had resources as well as friends. I'm surrounded by great friends, like one of my Bible study buddies, David Brown, Sam Amstead. Some of you know him. He's on mission trips, and he's a kind of a spiritual mentor of mine. Rick Little, he's a foundation guy, started International Youth Foundation. They were just with us for several days last week, and he actually helped me refine this talk. Mike Jordan, my good buddy from Chicago. Just the list goes on and all of folks that have come and visited and been helpful through this process. And find spiritual. I shared with you earlier how I try to use every opportunity in medical visits to just open up to God's word and how He's speaking to me. What the heck? This slide. Well, a lot of people ask. So you got melanoma. How's your lifestyle changed? Are you not going out in the sun anymore? Well, no, I do, but my question here was which guy has the better abs? And I think the answer is you don't know because I'm not wearing a shirt. But which one has melanoma? Well, it's me because I'm wearing the hat and shirt, and also SPF 50. I am super careful. I have our family. We're just really careful when we go out to protect, SPF 50 to protect the skin. I didn't mention earlier with risks that, of course, sun, but also tanners. I hate tanners. There's an organization I'm getting involved with called Aim at Melanoma, and they're working legislation to get rid of tanners. And every tanner in Battlecreek has heard from me, and I'd love to shut them down. There's a 3 to 4-fold increased risk from tanners, and so I do everything I can to try to protect, to be sensible. And diet, we always had a good diet, but I say not perfect. And I like to dovetail on what Chris Nappy said on the last. I loved that lecture on the nutrition and AMD. That hits home with us because we've really ramped up our diet. We have a garden. It's a organic, pesticide, spray-free diet. So we eat a lot of our raspberries, strawberries we grow. We buy, about this time of year, we bought nearly 100 pounds, 90 pounds of blueberries, and we'll eat those during the year. Vegetables, little or no processed polyunsaturated fats, and so we're really on that diet. Dr. Who was one at MD Anderson that kind of got us on it too several years ago. He's doing studies, and they're doing studies at MD Anderson. They started on animals, now they're doing human trials, but they took a group of rats and they induced cancer on them. Then half of them they put on a high sugar diet. They all died in like a month or two. And then the non-sugar diet rats, they lived on. So we're all about the low processed sugar, carbohydrates, and low glycemic fruits and vegetables. So we love gardening, and I'm doing some things that I can. I can't run much anymore. I can't golf. Look at the ball. I can't see the club head, and you're supposed to keep your eye on the ball. And tennis. One of the more difficult times in my kind of sporting career was last year when my field defect was getting worse. I was on the court, and my opponents were hitting balls to me, and I was just making a swoosh and missing the ball over and over. And our club pro came to me and said, "Jeff, what's wrong? Your forehand was your weapon. What's wrong?" And I told him this, and he said, "Well, let me, I'll give you some free lessons." I said, "Jeff, I don't think it's not correctable with lessons." That was the last time I played tennis. I came home, and I'll tell you, I cried. I just had a moment. I was saying goodbye to a sport that was a kind of passion, and so I've had to give up some things. That running of many years, and but I'm looking at things that I still can do. And a new sport I'm going to do, both Diane and I, tomorrow is fly fishing. Somebody told me you should get into fly fishing out here, so we signed up for a course tomorrow. I was inspired a few years ago by a fellow named Dave Dravecki. Anybody ever heard of him? He was a pitcher for San Francisco, right? San Francisco Giants. He, as you all know, maybe some of you remember the video, he was pitching and his arm just snapped in the pitch. He found out he had a pathologic fracture from osteosarcoma, and he had to have his pitching arm amputated. You imagine, end of career. And he had a prayer breakfast. He shared with us that, well, he's a Christian, an avid Christian and inspirational teacher and speaker, and he told us he took up fly fishing. And I figured if he can do that one-handed, I can. He said, I once caught a fish this big. Yeah. So I think I could maybe catch a fish this big. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I can swim. We did a little swim marathon I did with my daughters last week. Actually, a week ago today. Some light treks I can do until my joints start aching. It takes me 2 days to recover. This was up Ouzel Lake and Falls, beautiful trek. This is up the top of the Alpine Summit, beautiful site. One of the organizations that I'm involved, I'll be another 5 minutes, is that okay? All right, 5 maybe, 7 minutes. Is called Aim at Melanoma, and they are avid in research, advocacy. They have lobbyists that are working on Tanner legislation. So I'm working with Valerie Guild there, and I'm probably going to start with, you see the name down at the bottom, Barbara is a call-in nurse, so newly diagnosed melanoma patients can call this number, and within 24, 48 hours, she'll respond, and I know she's rather overwhelmed, so I'm going to be another voice to respond and talk, although it's not a Christian organization. I'm going to introduce, to the extent I can, my faith in directing patients to appropriate treatment and centers, and just answer their questions. There's also University of, it's a Western Mission University med school where I've been on staff, but I haven't been very active. So I'm looking at doing some teaching there starting in the fall. One thing I'm gonna miss, and there's still some uncertainty. I just don't know. I'm just listening to the Lord where He's gonna direct me, but I've been on a number of mission projects. My first was with Juan Valle. He remembered back in the late 80s, and a couple there, and with Willie Hunter, went to Nicaragua, with Dan Gold. I saw Dan, yeah. So Dan kind of got me back into missions after a lag with our kids, busy with our kids, and lately I've been going to Zambia since 2004, about once a year. Just a quick views of what we've been doing there. Cataract surgery. This is working with Sam Amstutz. He was doing a major squamous cell carcinoma that extended back in the globe. It was virtually a orbital exoneration. And here I'm doing a squamous cell carcinomas are extremely common, and because of HIV and sun exposure there in Zambia. Connecting with the kids, my daughter and my friends, and here I'm with Jillian and Bridget, Bonnie with one of the young kids. The camaraderie and the faith enhancement I've noticed from doing a project has just been immense, and what I'll really miss is connecting with the local church. This is Pastor Weston, who happens to also be the clinic director. We support his church, and we'll still continue doing that. And I say my prayers are that God would direct me if maybe I can do medical treatment and minor procedures to the extent that I can in the years to come. I tentatively am planning, pending the next MRI scan in August. If it's okay, it'll be at Cleveland Clinic. If it's okay, I may go the first couple weeks of January, maybe meet Dan Hood there. So in conclusion, I want to share a story, and it was at one of the Valley in the 7 years, and it was at a time at University of Michigan during the course after the craniotomy. That wasn't as bad, but I had several of these complications, the pituitary, and then one of the dreaded complications is colitis. It's kind of like an ulcer colitis, but for 3 or 4 weeks, my system was just, I couldn't eat, drink. I was weak, and had a visit to the emergency room, and ultimately I was admitted to the U of M hospital. And I was feeling so bad that when Diane went to park the car, the resident came in, he asked about advance directive. I said, yeah, I have one, but I want to sign. I made myself a no code. He said, what? You can survive this. And I said, no, I want, and I insisted. Then he brought the chief resident and tried to talk me out. I said, no, that's it. It wasn't that I was angry, but I was just kind of saying to the Lord, if you want to take me, I'm fine. Right now, I just felt that bad. And Diane came back from, she heard of it, and one of the doctors came in with her, and we promptly changed it. But what we did was we just enveloped ourselves in prayer, and I prayed, God, is there any way you can make some sense, something positive of this, then please do so. And when I found out what happened in the next, I think it was for 5 or 6 days, was a number of things, connections with the staff and the patients. I found out that a fellow had to die called John. Somebody died to open up that bed. The patient next to me was my age. He had a kidney tumor that was very advanced. He was on interferon, but much higher dose than I was on. And he had a Catholic background, but hadn't been reading his Bible. So I said, what do you like? He says, I think I like Psalms. I said, okay. So we started reading Psalms together. And he was coming back to his faith, you see. And during the late nights, twice in a row after his infusions, he crashed. He was bottoming out, like blood pressure 50 or 60. His physician wasn't around then. And after the second round, I said, the Lord led me to say this, Tim. I said, you don't have to do the treatment. I mean, you can say no. And really, so the next time the physician came in, I was quite convinced that he wasn't going to survive another treatment. And so he said no, and the doctor couldn't talk him into it. Tim left the hospital feeling pretty good. And for some time, I kept in contact with him. He was doing all right. I'm not sure now. This has been for 3 or 4 years. But then he left, and another patient came in, very sick. I never could communicate with him, named Philip. And he had very advanced stage colon cancer. He had a big family, 6, and they were in. I moved my curtain and everything so to make room. And they were praying. They were talking about praying one time, and could I pray with you? So I hobbled over, but on my robe, and so I prayed with them. I had a couple opportunities to pray with a couple of the staff, the nurses, and so I realized that as I'm getting better, God was using me in ways I didn't even imagine. He maybe placed me there for a reason, even as deep the valley was. I didn't think I could get out of, but as I prayed, that the difference was just immense. And I came across an analogy to what I went through, and it's in Acts chapter 9. We all know of the story of the conversion of Saul. He was on that road to Damascus. He was blinded, and then he had to be led to Damascus. And what did he do? He prayed for those 3 days, and he was not fasting, but he did not eat. He did not eat during that time or drink for those 3 days. So he had, you can see, he had a forced dependence on God. He was forced. Same as myself. I didn't like to go into the hospital. I had this complication, but I had a forced dependence on God that made a huge difference in my life. I was in a fast, kind of induced for 3 days before my diet was advanced. I was fortunate to have an IV. Paul didn't. But the third thing that happened in Paul's experience, there was a two-way grace. First of all, there was a giver of the grace. Ultimately, it was God, but he chose Ananias to be the minister. Ananias laid his hands on Paul and said, brother Saul, brother Paul. I believe that's the point where Paul was saved. I believe he was called brother. And grace was extended on he who needed it most in that room. So same, then in the days and weeks to come, we all know that Paul extended grace to many people and inspired many disciples. And so same in my situation, I received grace from Diane, from the Word, and I was able to extend that to those around me. So I had a forced dependence. I was enveloped in prayer, and I received, and I was able to give grace, and it was all because of God. And in Philippians, Paul said, to me, to live is Christ, to die is gain. And he said furthermore, but it's more important for me that I remain with you. I have just an urging that God has that intention for me too. I don't know 100%. I don't know how long, but I'm off the charts on those 5-year survival charts. I don't look at those anymore. But at 7 years plus, I believe God has the same intention. James said, "Consider it a joy when you encounter various trials, for the testing will provide endurance of faith." And that's been my story, my experience. My faith is enhanced, even though what happened wasn't my intention. As I say, many are the intentions in a man's heart, but it's the purpose of the Lord that prevails. And that kind of came to me in a question just about a month or so ago, as I was looking at taking this maybe permanent leave from my office. I met with our associate pastor, Dan Black, and I was kind of telling him this story and my future that I'm contemplating, and he said, if you could ask God, and God will allow you to go back and set the reset button, say, boom, 2011, no cancer, just go on, your practice thriving and all that. would you? You know, no one had asked me that question. I never thought about it, but it took me a split second. I said, no, I wouldn't have changed anything. Mainly because I feel that God had a purpose for me. I wouldn't be here giving this talk if things were changed, but I have full confidence that God's got a purpose for me, and that whether it's weeks, months, years, it's in His hands. And so I'll finish with that, except that, sorry, I'm not 10 minutes over, but this was a photo at my 60th birthday about a year ago, and again, I hope and trust that God has many more to come. Thank you very much. Since we have a little pause, does anybody have any questions or comments? Thank you.